Okay, perfect. So for your viewing pleasure, to increase your viewing pleasure for the next 60 minutes, please turn off your social media, turn off televisions, anything else that might be distracting, and just stay focused on this hour that is solely focused on helping you build your business and accelerating into the pivot. Stay till the end, everybody who is with us till the end. I'll send our world famous ebook, Building a Winning Team. So how you can use the power of the 4 leader archetypes to be the best version of yourself and to help mentor and coach others to be the best versions of themselves too. Takes you step by step through the process, exactly what to do to accentuate the healthy habits and prune away anything that's holding you back. You are in the right place if you are launching or rebooting your business. So there are some who are launching their business. They are some on here who are new entrepreneurs of their expertise, others who are rebooting and they don't necessarily want to go back to the way things were in, pre-COVID. So they want to turn over a new leaf, grow sustainably. You're in the right place if you're starting in a new leadership role. As you know, the habits that got you to one level aren't necessarily the habits that will enable you to thrive at the next level, especially if you are a new CEO or a new president. You're dealing with a whole different level of autonomy and uncertainty. You're in the right place if you are facing turbulence and uncertainty and you want clear guide paths through all of that turbulence and uncertainty so you can grow. You are also in the right path if you're sick of drama and refereeing. Why is Jim such a jerk? Why does Joe interrupt me every time I'm talking? Why is there so much drama and fighting between Gina and Lisa? Why is Nicole, who was seemed like this larger than life personality when we hired her, why is she now reserved and doesn't seem to want to come out of her shell? Why do these certain people sit next to one another? Why are people clumping in groups rather than integrating? If you're sick of all of that and you want to sort through all of that, you're in the right place. And if you want to stop pinballing, chasing a shiny object like my dog Daisy getting after a squirrel, if you want to stop that kind of behavior, stop the firefighting, you're in the perfect spot here. Okay, so here's the game plan for today. I'm going to talk about 3 of my very painful mistakes in hopes that my long and painful and sometimes expensive road shortens your path to success. We're going to bust a few myths that keep you struggling and keep our workplaces less than they could be. We're going to discuss our step-by-step process for accelerating your pivot and then next steps to help you make all of that happen. Okay, so my personal journey, of course, has been a roller coaster of ups and downs, sometimes moving up very quickly, sometimes moving down very quickly, and sometimes somewhere in between, twists and turns and slow and fast. And an important safety tip, never listen to anyone, especially any coach, any mentor who says that they've never made any mistakes or is hiding those mistakes, because they're either lying or they're trying to hide something from you, or they've never tried anything hard. And if they meet any of those 3 categories, they are not the right person to help you grow. So I'm going to review 3 of these uber mistakes that I made that hopefully you won't repeat, or I can help you prevent from repeating. First, mistake number 1 is copycat. So as a leader, I was very fortunate. I had all sorts of awesome leaders that were great mentors, and I looked up to them. They helped me become, the leader that that I have been and hopefully am today. One of the mistakes I made early on, though, was figuring that I had to copy them. In order to be a good leader, I had to be just like them. And one of the biggest ones that I saw from a lot of leaders I respected was that they were, they're very extroverted personalities. And I felt, shoot, if I'm going to be a great leader, I have got to be an extrovert. I have got to be the center of attention. I got to be the life of the party. I got to be on all the time, every time. And oh my goodness, it was, not only did I not feel right, I didn't feel authentic, but it also, it sucked the life out of me. I was so drained that from this, that when I got home with people who needed and deserved my attention and friends who needed and deserved my attention, they didn't get it because I was in this semi-vegetative state, having the life sucked out of me. If you've ever seen a group of folks in the military, so I spent 24 and a half years in the military, you've seen them like watch the movie Patton or Full Metal Jacket or any of these things with these sort of big, loud personalities involved, and they come out of the theater and they start acting like that. And you're just like, dude, this is really ridiculous. You even look ridiculous and you sound ridiculous. But that's an example of copycat behavior. And I did that, and it exhausted me and it felt inauthentic. So one of the things that I learned is look, be yourself. And yourself is good enough. We'll talk a little bit more about introverts and extroverts in a second, but be yourself is good enough. And you know what? Be yourself, because everybody else is taken. So what you got in your head, in your heart, and in your guts and your backbone are good enough to lead and get your business growing. Mistake number 2 was a results only focus. So early in my career, I was very competitive. Still am very competitive, but back then I had a scarcity mentality, a very win-lose mentality. Now I have an abundance mentality where a lot of us everybody can win. And early in that career, being very competitive, being very results focused, and I made it very clear the importance of results and importance of winning to my team. And we were in a particularly competitive situation, and one of my direct reports, dynamite person, super talented, cut a corner so we could get ahead. And to make matters worse, my boss finds out it before I do. So he calls me on a carpet. I get read the riot act. I felt like this guy sitting in a chair, hands over the head, going, my goodness, I just got dressed down really hard. And what did I do to bring this on? And as or what can I do differently? And as I thought through it, I recognized that everything I'd been emphasizing were all about the sort of results and the performance. And what I hadn't been emphasizing with equal authority and attention were the values. How we get those results, of course, are just as important as the results themselves. And what I learned from this is, if you want to get command of your culture, you've got to put equal attention on your results and your values. Clarify your expectations, your performance expectations and standards, your behavioral expectations and standards. And when people understand the expectations, they will rise to the occasion. Direct correlation between expectations and results. So get command of your culture by clarifying performance standards and behavioral expectations and holding people accountable. Mistake number 3 was a lack of empathy. So Afghanistan, 2007, I was commanding about 1,000 paratroopers in Eastern Afghanistan. A picture of us. And we were supposed to go to Iraq as a last minute shift to Afghanistan. We really didn't know much about the culture, about the environment that we're going into. And the first 90 days or so, we just were kicking butt, taking names, thought we were doing great. Everything was awesome. And as we began to learn more, we figured out that things weren't quite the way that they seemed. And in fact, 95% of the people that we thought we were helping were actually trying to kill us. And that realization really made us begin to see the situation through Afghan eyes. How could we have been so wrong? How could we have misinterpreted things so badly early on? And as we began to kind of see ourselves and see the situation through Afghan eyes, we were able to start making smart decisions, do smart things that got people on side and working cooperatively with us to the point at which a large insurgent group, thanks to pressure from the population and the work we've done together, a large insurgent group stopped fighting and then later joined the government, which, I mean, it's the only time that this has happened in the 20 years of this war. Now, I took that lesson from Afghanistan and thought I had learned it well enough and even taught a lot about it. And then I failed to apply it. I didn't apply it well enough. In fact, I failed to apply it early on in my business. So when I first launched my business, I thought digital marketing has got to be the wave of the future. I need to do more digital marketing. I need to get good at this. So I hired a digital marketing firm, about $25,000. And we put together some really cool, I mean, these were really good videos, really high quality videos, put these videos together, created this really complex sales funnel with, oh my goodness, it had different permutations and stuff. And it was quite an engineering science project. And we were all fired up. We're getting ready to launch. And this was about taking people to Normandy on leadership trips. And what this firm knew how to do was Facebook ads. And we're convinced Facebook ads is the ticket and is going to get people signed up. So we launched the funnel, and oh my goodness, we had a reach of nearly 1 million people. We had nearly 2 million impressions from these videos, all sorts, I mean, hundreds of thousands of likes. We spent over $17,000 on Facebook ads. And guess how many people signed up to take a leadership trip to Normandy? 0. That's right. Out of 1 million people who we reached, nearly 2 million impressions and $17,000 in Facebook ads, not a single person signed up. And what it showed me was I had this great product that, first of all, I had this great product that nobody wanted to buy because I communicated as a nice to have rather than as a, something that was actually going to get results. And second, I was marketing it to entirely the wrong people. I mean, 275,000 likes, but not a single one was a buyer, because those buyers that I was targeting for a program like that aren't on Facebook in the middle of the day. Long, painful, expensive lesson. The key is that I learned is, you know what? You got two ears, 2 eyes, and 1 mouth. So listen and observe 4 times more than you speak. Be able to see yourself in a situation from the eyes of your customers and the people that you're serving, and you will be able to generate products and services that they want, not something that you simply like yourself and nobody else wants to buy. So those were 3 uber painful mistakes that I hope will shorten your path to success. My big aha through all of this, of course, is, look, organizations grow sustainably when they get, we call the big things right. So leadership, culture, and strategy, whether this is in the military, whether this is in business, when you get those 3 things right, it's like the legs of a stool. You've got when they're in the right place and aligned, you get a stable platform for growth. If one of them is missing, things are going to fall apart. So our entire business is organized about helping you get the 3 big things right. And when you get those big things right, then revenues tend to follow. When you get your things, in the right place here, then your business is going to grow sustainably. So here's a testimonial from Jim Thaden, Executive Director of the Central Asia Institute. Thanks to Chris's support, our management and governance are now highly integrated. We have very high degrees of engagement, accountability, and ownership. And his experience, knowledge, and sensitivity led to a strategy that created $2 million annually in new revenues. And this was a smaller nonprofit, $2 million annually in new revenues. Great work by the Central Asia Institute. Now, here's some data points about just how hard all of this is. 67% of Americans, according to Gallup, report being unengaged at work. That means 2 out of every 3 Americans say that they spend the majority of their time at work doing something other than being productive. It could be rework, it could be drama, it could be infighting, politics, or whatever. 2/3 of Americans say that that's how they spend most of their working day. Imagine how much money in your payroll is going down the drain. 75% of Americans, also a Gallup poll, report that, or who left their jobs voluntarily, report that they did so to leave their managers. So 75% of the people who said, look, I'm out of here, I don't want this job anymore, did so to get away from their managers. I mean, that's extraordinary. Talk about a toxic work environment and the effects that that has. And of course, as you know, the employee disengagement and employee turnover are like the highest costs any organization faces. And they're hidden costs. Unless you know where to look for them, it's like just throwing money down the drain. It's like having a hole in the bottom of your bucket. You don't even know. And you just keep pouring more water in and don't realize why the bucket's not filling. And in fact, employee turnover costs anywhere between 50 and 200% of that position's annual salary. So if you're losing 10 people a year at an average pay of $100,000, then you are probably throwing $1 million in revenue just down the drain, just in the churn, in the revolving door of employee turnover, and not to mention what's going on with the disengagement. Fix that, and you've got now tons more revenue for growth. Employees, check this out. Employees who report that they use their strengths every day say that wind up being 2 to 3 times more productive than their peers. And it's extraordinary. It's like a no-brainer. It's like, oh, wow. People who are doing something that they enjoy and are good at are like more engaged and productive. It's astoundingly obvious and yet so hard to implement. So many organizations find it hard to implement. And then finally, another data point, the final one I'll share, is 90% of strategies, according to Kaplan and Norton's book, Balanced Scorecard, 90% of strategies are not executed successfully. So organizations, nonprofits, companies hire strategic planners, and they create these ginormous telephone book thick blueprints for, if you follow every step of this blueprint for the next 10 years, Shazam, you're going to be successful. And of course, it's so complicated and so full of consultant speak that nobody understands it except the consultants. And yet these organization companies and nonprofits pay tens of thousands of dollars for what amounts oftentimes to professional malpractice. Strategy, as we'll talk later, is not about a blueprint. It's about a framework for making decisions about the purpose and direction of your organization. So those telephone book thick, expensive blueprints of course, have all gone out the window since COVID. And one great test of your strategy is if your strategy is still intact after COVID, as much as it was before COVID, then you've got a solid framework for making decisions about your business, the future or the purpose and direction of it. If your strategy is not valid, then the next time you go about it, you need to recalibrate because it needs to be evergreen and drama proof. Okay, let's talk about 5 myths. I'm going to focus on 5 myths. The first one, and I indicated a little bit of this earlier.
Hey, Chris, we have a question from Emily.
Okay, Emily, go for it.
Before we move on, are there certain industries with historically higher engagement scores?
Certain industries with you see things, you see employee turnover in. There's no evidence that certain industries, tend to have higher employee engagement. It really is a function of the culture. So you do get some industries with historically or with generally high turnover. like the food service industry, for instance, experiences a very high turnover. Anything, any industry that tends to employ college kids during the summer and then they go back to school tends to have a lot of churn. Some of that self-inflicted, some of that is just purely seasonal. But I have not seen any studies that suggest that there is an industry specific differences in employee engagement. It's all about the leadership and culture. So thanks, Emily, for a great question. Okay, so myth number one is, and I alluded to this a bit earlier, I need to be a visionary extrovert in order to be a good leader. And here's the deal is some of us are visionaries and some of us are detail oriented. Some of us are introverts and some of us are extroverts. There's no single ideal archetype, if you will, for good leadership. George Washington, in fact, was a detail-oriented introvert. So he's the exact opposite of the visionary extrovert, and he did pretty darn well. Martin Luther King Jr., a visionary introvert, also an extraordinary leader. And in fact, you can look at Abraham Lincoln, a detail-oriented extrovert. So leaders come in we'll talk about 4 different archetypes. You don't have to be a visionary extrovert to be a great leader. You just have to be yourself, accentuate the healthy habits, and prune away those that are holding you back. The second myth is that performance feedback is helpful. And actually, if you read Ashley Goodall's book, 9 Lies About Work, this dynamite book, he just kind of takes down this entire industry, if you will, entire set of practices around annual performance reviews, saying that in fact they're really not helpful. It's one thing to give people feedback on specific techniques to help them sharpen their techniques. That's one thing, but the annual sort of performance reviews are actually very damaging, because what happens oftentimes is what my mentor Michelle Flournoy calls the mini-me syndrome, where the people giving the feedback oftentimes are trying to clone themselves. They're giving feedback to help that employee become more like the manager, rather than helping them be the best version of themselves. And so that's why feedback sessions oftentimes can be very difficult, very painful, and can often push people away. So General Stan McChrystal, also one of my mentors, says, you know what, leaders should be like gardeners. And what do gardeners do? They cultivate the soil. They help everything that they are growing become the best version of itself. Not try to turn something into something different. Help it be the best version of itself. It's funny when I go back and look at my performance reviews, and now that I know how to think this way, when leaders who were very detail oriented tend to praise, write about positive things about detail, being detail oriented and nailing the details. When I look at my performance reviews from leaders who are more visionary, they tend to talk about solving big problems. So the fact that feedback is idiosyncratic is a part of is a problem both in business and military, and something that we're going to help you get through and do differently. Third myth is that culture equals a good mood, and it's what I call the sugar donut approach to culture, where if you choke down a sugar donut, you get the big high, and it lasts for a while. You get the sugar high, and then of course you get the crash. So a lot of organizations we've seen, and I know you've seen it too, where they take the sugar donut approach, and it's all about trying to keep people in a good mood. Everything is awesome. It's sort of like Legoland, people singing everything is awesome when deep down they know it's not. And then you bring in these motivational speakers and it gets everybody sort of pumped up, and you get the high, but then you get the crash. And even worse is if there is a suggestion that things are going to change in the workplace, and then they don't, because everything always tends to snap back the way it was, then it's creating cynicism and a toxic work environment, which then is driving good people out the door. So a way to think about culture is not about good mood, but about high morale. And morale consists of three things. Knowing what you're doing is important, doing it well, knowing it's appreciated. So knowing what you're doing important is all about the why. People understanding the why behind decisions, behind policies, behind practices. And I've met so many leaders who get annoyed when somebody asks them why, rather than looking at it as, hey, look, when somebody asks why, it means they care. And this is really good news for you, because then if you can articulate the why, now you have somebody who's fully committed to your success. Doing it well, the second part of morale, doing it well, is all about clarity in your performance standards and behavioral expectations. There's a direct correlation between expectations and results. When people know the expectations, they are going to rise to the occasion to get results, and you can hold people accountable for those. And then knowing it's appreciated, when you help people be the best versions of themselves, they are more likely to contribute their best selves to the success of your organization. So think about culture not as good mood, but as high morale. Number four, I need to wait for less uncertainty. I don't want to make any business decisions now. I don't want to build my strategy. I don't want to change my flywheel. I need to wait for less uncertainty. And the challenge with this mentality is that actually this is exactly the time you need a strategy and exactly the time you need to make decisions. Because if you're not, then it's like treading water in a river where the current's headed toward the Niagara Falls. And so while you're treading water, not wanting to make any decisions, not wanting to make any moves because you're not sure which way to go, you're losing energy and you're being propelled towards the falls. And at a certain point, you hit the point of no return and it's game over. So now is actually the right time to begin working on your strategy, begin working on your decision making. And what you need is a framework for looking at scenarios, for finding commonalities within those scenarios, despite all of this uncertainty, and cracking on, getting to moving forward and recognizing where the off ramps might be. This is exactly what we help organizations do, and getting this right is really important, because right now, over 100,000, according to the Washington Post, over 100,000 small businesses have shut their doors permanently as a result of this crisis. And when you look back at the financial crisis of 2008, it was 1.8 million businesses closed for good. So getting moving, building momentum, and doing this a smart way is essential to our pivot, to accelerating our pivot. And we're not likely to see a new normal anytime soon. What we're more likely to do instead is to see a series of new abnormals that we have to navigate, and we can't afford just simply to tread water. Fifth is, I don't have time. That's the fifth myth. I don't have time. And of course you've got time. The issue is not the amount of time in the day. The issue is what you're doing with that time, your priorities. And leaders tend to find that if they are solely focused on firefighting and don't save time for fire prevention, then they just get trapped in this sort of hamster wheel, and they're going round and round and they're making no progress. Those who take the time for fire prevention often find that not only are they able to get those fire prevention elements in place, but they have to do less firefighting. And we're going to show you some techniques to do exactly that. Okay, so in the chat room, which of these 5 did you enjoy the most? So which of these 5 myths did you enjoy getting busted the most? Which resonates most with you? Go ahead and type in the chat room which of these 5 myths resonates most with you. Go ahead, Nicole.
We've got John said 4, Chris 3, Clint 4, Kareen 1, 2, and 3.
Oh my.
Vikram 3, and Tom 2.
Yeah.
And then we also have Christine, all of them. And we also Christine also has a question.
Okay.
What do you do about leaders that don't align their actions with their words other than leave?
That's probably the best thing you can do. There are some, and look, people who don't who are not authentic or sincere like that. I mean, if you they don't deserve your time, talent, and energy. The bottom line. So a couple of things in those situations. The first one is you can flag this misalignment in a just in a very positive way by just saying, just repeating back instructions that somebody gave you that don't align with certain values or expectations. And a lot of times, I mean, there are plenty of people I've made honest mistakes in my past. I mean, more often than I can count. And a lot of times when you use that technique, you just read back rather than just assuming what they mean. Just read back and make sure you get the clarification. If there is incongruence, there is that sort of cognitive dissonance, then a good leader will correct that right away and say, no, that's not what I meant. Thanks for bringing that to my attention. If you get people who just won't do that and you wind up having this toxic work environment, the best thing you do is vote with your feet. Michelle Flournoy, again, one of my mentors, has this great advice, which she said, choose your boss. You know, don't just choose the role that you want to be in, the job, but choose your boss. Because if you've got a great boss, then any role that you serve in is, you're gonna be productive. You're gonna enjoy it. You're gonna have a good work environment, and you're gonna have somebody that helps you be the best version of you. Thanks, Christine. Let's talk about accelerating your pivot. We're going to talk about these are the 7 elements to accelerating your pivot. And then we've got one additional one about that brings it all together and creates success. So MVGV means mission, vision, goals, values, focus, leadership, culture, action plan, decision-making, resilience. You put that together with accountability and you get success. Let's do a self-check. And I'm not going to ask anybody to put this in the chat. But if you are missing mission, vision, goals, and values, then you get tacticitis. You are constantly chasing cash. You are constantly changing tactics, but it's not grounded on anything. You don't have a framework to make decisions, and you wind up very soon, nobody knows what you really stand for. You wind up having no market, no customers, no clients, no business. If you have no focus, then what you get is the pinball effect, where you are just sort of pinging from one thing to another and driving your organization absolutely bonkers in these constantly shifting priorities. You do a lot of stuff, but nothing well, nothing to a high standard. If you don't have good, authentic leadership, you get slow failure. It's like death by 1,000 cuts, where the leaders are not the best versions of themselves. They're not helping others be the best version of themselves. And eventually your talent votes with his feet, and you get slow failure. You can have the best product, you can have the best service, but you don't have the right leadership, then the organization is going to fail. If you're missing culture, then you get what we call a toxic work environment. It's TWE, toxic work environment. A toxic work environment, according to a study by the Michigan State University, costs an average of $14,000 per affected employee. And in a toxic work environment, people spend more time in politics and more time covering their butts and less time helping your productivity. If you don't have a usable action plan, then you're on the hamster wheel. Lots of frenetic activity, but no progress. If you don't make sound decisions, then you get expensive failure, kind of like I did with the digital marketing campaign. And finally, if you don't have resilience, then your organization is not going to be able to handle success, and it's not going to be able to handle setbacks. And either way, it becomes a faceplant. Either the organization becomes a zombie and just withers and fails, or you get this catastrophic growth problem where you get all sorts of growth that the organization's not resilient enough to handle, and then you get this kind of epic fail. In a if I were to sit down with anybody, when I sit down with anybody for a cup of coffee and talk about these things, within about 5 minutes, I can pretty much figure out which of these things are missing. And just by asking you a few questions, you'll diagnose that yourself. So on a piece of paper or on your smartphone or whatever, just type in which of those. Don't put it in the chat because it's private, but just type in or write down or think about which of these things is missing for you. And oftentimes it's somewhere between 2 to 4, but just take a second and write down which of these 7 elements is missing and you want to make sure that you get after.
Hey, Chris, Vikram has a question.
Go ahead, V.
What about well-meaning leaders or team members who overpromise and underdeliver?
Yeah, good question, Vikram. And you do see that where people overpromise and underdeliver. And part of the way to deal with it, leaders won't even recognize that they're doing it. But in the eyes of the people on a team, that's exactly what's going on. And it's creating it's creating a lot of frustration. So we're going to get to this very point in just a couple minutes. So just hold that thought. When we talk about culture, we're going to get to that. Thanks. Okay, let's drill down on just a couple of these. All right, first of all, if you don't have good focus, then you're a pinball, and we don't want pinball. So here's exactly how to deal with that is, with greater focus. And if you're a small business or you're a solo entrepreneur, you really got to nail the priorities. And we shouldn't have any more than about 3 priorities. I once had a boss who said, hey, Chris, there are no priorities amongst essentials. And I'm like, what? No priorities amongst essentials. That means, if everything is important, that means nothing's truly important. Nothing truly matters. And so the best organizations will have about 3 priorities, and those are the 3 things that they want to do well. And they were laser focused their time, talent, and energy around those priorities. It's just like, your priorities, your goals, write them down, make everybody aware of them, organize time, talent, and energy around it. Now, that also means that you probably have to produce a not now list. So there are things that you want to accomplish, things that you want to achieve, important priorities that you have, but they may not get into the top 3. If they're not in the top 3, then they belong on the not now list. So put the not now list somewhere. I use a Trello board for my not now list. Write those things down on the not now list so you keep visibility on them, but that they're on the back burner and you're going to get to them when you accomplish more higher priority items. Also, create a not to-do list. Like, what are the things you're going to stop doing? So you're going to laser focus on your priorities. You're going to give them your time, talent, and energy. There are probably things that you are doing now that you don't want to do, that you don't belong doing. And some of those things are items you can delegate or outsource or just simply discontinue. And that's a great way to categorize those things. So stuff you want to get off the plate belongs in one of 3 areas: delegate, outsource, or I'm not going to do it anymore. And then finally, develop a cadence, develop a rhythm in your personal time and your organizational time. So there's a daily, a weekly, a monthly, quarterly, and annual rhythm. Create that rhythm, and that predictability is going to power your personal productivity and the productivity of your team. Here's exactly what I'm talking about. This is an example of my calendar from late March, early April. And here's how I do weekly planning. Here's how I create my weekly planning. So I've got time to work on my priorities. The first one is I will set aside chunks of time. So COT stands for chunks of time. Every Monday, Wednesday, Friday, 9 a.m. to 12 p.m. That's my time. Those are my chunks of time to be productive, to work on my business and my priorities. You can go to my scheduler and you will never find an open time on that scheduler on Monday, Wednesday, or Friday from 9 a.m. to 12 p.m. because that's my time. I don't compromise it. The second thing is put on your calendar the templates, your weekly, your monthly, your quarterly templated items, the things that you do routinely and you want to do well. So for me, a series of calls with people on the team, people in the franchise, webinars, and master programs were things that are templated items. So I'm going to make sure that number 2 is I dedicate time for those, and those are predictable items recurring every week. Then, and Google's got a great tool, the task tool on your Google Calendar. If you use a Google Calendar, Outlook's got something similar. Write down, what are my priorities for the week? So in this particular case, I had priorities for a couple of different business proposals, developing a master class, and some chapters for a book I'm reading. And then you allocate time for those activities, for those priority activities. And then what you've got left is the white space where you can do things like deal with emails and do the firefighting, engage in opportunities that they arise. So this very simple weekly planning technique is going to double your productivity. Set out your chunks of time, get your templated items, set your weekly goals, and dedicate time for those goals, and it will power your productivity. Client testimonial from Sam Cook, founder of James Cook Media. 6 months ago, my business went through a major transition. Chris helped us navigate this tough period with his strategy support, expert counsel, and ability to hold me and my team accountable. I have no doubt that we would not be in business today without Chris's coaching and support. Let's talk a bit about leadership. Now, without good, authentic leadership, we get slow failure, death by 1,000 cuts. So I mentioned earlier a bit about extroverts and introverts. One of the things we did at SLA was we looked at how are leaders hardwired, because we all noticed that there are different leaders lead differently, and authentic leaders lead authentically in different ways. And so we looked at the different ways that people are hardwired, and the most compelling ways that affected our approach to leadership, how we lead, is, are we introverts or extroverts? And introvert, extrovert has nothing to do with whether you got good people skills or not. Lots of introverts have good people skills, so lots of extroverts. There are introverts and there are extroverts with absolutely rotten people skills. What the difference between an introvert and an extrovert is where you get your energy. If you're an extrovert, you get your energy, you recharge your batteries by being around other people. If you're an introvert, you recharge your batteries by being alone. When I learned to be comfortable with myself as an introvert, I learned to make time by myself to recharge my batteries. So I was going to the gym, going for a run, reading a book, putting on the headphones, taking my dog out for a walk, enabled me to recharge and get back 100%. And then some of us are hardwired to be idea people and vision people, and others are hardwired to be very detail oriented. And this, when you put these together, creates 4 archetypes, which we call PROM. So pioneers are your vision oriented extroverts. They are the people that like to rally lots of others behind new ideas, new innovations, love challenging the status quo. If you are extroverted and detail oriented, you're a reconciler. People who love to build teams, to manage consensus, and keep people on board with very difficult issues through tough times. Detail-oriented introverts are operators, people who nail the details, people who make the trains run on time and to a very high standard. And finally, vision-oriented introverts are mavericks. Mavericks love to solve complex, wicked problems. I myself am a card-carrying maverick. And what I know is that my sweet spot is solving complex, wicked problems, like helping people accelerate their growth. But I also know that I need operators and reconcilers in particular around me to implement these things, hold my feet on the ground so I don't drift off into Never Never Land. So let's look at some famous members of each of these different archetypes. Oprah Winfrey, your classic pioneer. rallying millions and millions of people across the world around ideas of social justice. Abraham Lincoln, your reconciler, holds the Union together during the Civil War with his team of rivals. He wins the Civil War, puts an end to slavery, and sets the foundations for the country to come back together again after the war. Queen Elizabeth, operator, a steady hand at the helm through all the trials and tribulations of Great Britain from the Second World War all the way to the present, managing things ranging from nuclear weapons and decolonization to COVID-19, economic shutdown, and Megxit. Finally, Maverick, Steve Jobs, wanted to solve the complex, wicked problem of how do I get digital technology in the hands of people like you and me? And he created Apple, and the rest is history. 4 completely different kinds of leaders, 4 completely different archetypes, all changed the world in very special ways. There's no single leadership ideal. The key is to be yourself and be the best version of yourself. Now, this is also important, as I suggested, to your team. So Google is a fantastic example of this and the importance of having diversity in your archetypes. So Google in the 1990s, getting a lot of people really fired up about their product, about Google and their search engine and all that they're doing with it. And founders Larry Page and Sergey Brin were collecting a lot of venture capital and a lot of support. But over time, by the late 1990s, people were getting very frustrated with them because they were making some just really bad decisions that were damaging the growth of the organization. Finally, the investors just got fed up and they said, look, you two either hire somebody who can run this business or we're done here. They eventually relented and they brought on Eric Schmidt, a reconciler, to be the CEO, who brought with him John Rosenberg, an operator, as the senior vice president, mostly in charge of strategy. And with that sort of cognitive diversity, Google's been one of the most successful became one of the most successful organizations on the planet. Here's what Michelle Flournoy said, who's now the chief executive officer of WestExec and might be the next Secretary of Defense. She said, SLA's leader archetypes gave us a framework to discuss the ways that people lead differently and how we celebrate that diversity as we build commitment to a common culture. This is already benefiting our retention, engagement, and morale. Okay, culture. So Vikram, this gets at exactly your question. If we don't have solid culture, we get toxic work environment. We certainly don't want an environment like this. This in any circumstance is unacceptable, but you also get situations where maybe there's a disconnect, as Vikram said, between where leaders are over-promising and under-delivering. So here's the bottom line. Look, what happens in the halls and on the Zoom calls is far more powerful and has much greater effect than anything you write on the walls. We all see all sorts of organizations with nice sounding values and things written on the walls and you want a group hug after you read it. But what you see happening in the halls, how people are treating one another, how they're treating their clients and their customers, if it's different from that, and oftentimes it is, then it's creating this huge workplace cynicism. So Christine alluded to this, Vikram alluded to this. This is really, really powerful. So the key is, first of all, to create very clear expectations, as we mentioned. What are your performance expectations? What are your behavioral expectations? And hold people accountable to include you yourself for doing it. There's nothing worse than do as I say and not as I do. Second is get the facts. Now look, as leaders, we recognize that people aren't always going to tell us the way things really are. They are going to reveal some things to us. Other things are going to keep hidden. Oftentimes, when you're leading an organization, it's like looking at your organization through a camouflage net. And what you'll see in the camouflage are things that people want to show you, and they will keep hidden the things that they want to keep hidden. And sometimes you are going to do things that you think are done with the best of intentions, but wind up being radioactive or wind up being very damaging when it's, from the receiver's point of view. So the key is to get the facts. The best way to get the facts is a combination of surveys, focus groups, and interviews. Now, you can do this yourself as a leader, but just recognize that that people aren't always going to tell you the way things are, especially if there's any question about trust. So bringing in a third party to do surveys, and you can get about anything you want in about 8 questions or less. Short survey, short questionnaire, focus group, interview. You get somebody who's skilled doing that, and you are going to get a crystal clear picture of your culture. And you're gonna find out things like over-promising, under-delivering, and you're going to be able to take corrective action. The other thing that is a great idea to do is to shop your culture. So people shop their business. Is it easy to do business with me? My sales team's like this person in the picture, or are they making the process easy for me? You can do the same thing with your culture. Shop your culture, both yourself, shop your culture, having other folks shop your culture and give you feedback. Ask yourself, what am I, if I were to look at this from an employee's point of view, what would I see? If I were to look at this picture or this poster on the walls, if I were to look at how people are getting together in across the lunchroom where they gather, who gathers with whom and who doesn't, then you're going to get a really good idea about your culture just by your ears and your eyes. So shop your culture. Somebody who shopped her culture and did a great job of it is Colleen Creighton, Executive Director of the American Association of Suicidology, which is a dynamite suicide prevention NGO. She said, Chris's support has energized the organization. Our employee engagement doubled, and we are already 100K ahead in revenues from last year. Finally, let's take a quick look at action plan. So without a solid action plan, you're in the hamster wheel. One of the ways that we look at action plans is just think about it as the golden triangle. So we mentioned 3 priorities. If you have, as a small business, any more than 3 primary revenue generating activities, then you may be getting, sorry, Nicole just gave me a note about something happening with the house. So if you hear loud booms, it's all good. It's all construction. Okay, so golden triangle. MMA stands for not mixed martial arts, but money making activity. If you're a small business, if you got any more than 3 primary revenue generators, or if you're nonprofit, you got any more than 3 primary impact or donation generators, then you're probably scattered all over the place, probably too much. 3 is a really solid number that small businesses can manage. So, and ideally what you want is your money-making activities or your impact-making activities, your revenue-generating activities to be mutually reinforcing, one leading to another. That's the flywheel effect, where as you get each one going, they feed one another, and the whole is greater than the sum of its parts. That's the effect we want. So this is my personal golden triangle for my business. So mastery programs, 8-week programs that help you accelerate your business growth. Those will lead into workshops where a leader will say, hey, I was in your master program, is awesome. And now what we want to do is we want to, we're going to do a workshop around culture. We're going to get our culture right. And so we'll do a 1 or 2 day workshop on site, sometimes off site, even in places like Normandy. I figured that one out. We'll do workshops in those kind of places to help organizations thrive. And then third is command council of a year-long program of invitation-only leaders where we help each other, where we help each other grow, hold each other accountable. So that command council that we do is invitation only for leaders who are very serious about growth and about getting better. Client testimonial from Cindy Burgess, Executive Director of Friends of OFLAG 64, a new nonprofit. Chris is making us think deeper and better. We are pulling thoughts out of the weeds into a strategic point of view. We're moving along quite well despite COVID. Our strategy, knock, knock, knock. Our strategy proved to be evergreen and pandemic proof and has helped us make smart decisions and continue thriving. So we finished their strategy in February, right before the lockdown. And it was, and I asked Cindy about this just a few weeks ago. It's like, how are things going with your strategy? She's like, it's just exactly what she said. They proved to be evergreen and pandemic proof. And that's the test. You've got a good framework for making decisions about the purpose and direction of your organization if it's still intact despite COVID and the economic shutdown, et cetera. So way to go, Cindy Burgess. They did a great job as an organization putting their strategy together. And they have now increased their revenues from the target by 200%. Okay, so this is the key, putting all of it together. Mission, vision, goals, and values, focus, leadership, culture, action plan, decision-making, resilience is going to lead to success. But the secret sauce is right here. The secret sauce is application, conditioning, accountability. That's what leads to success. So we can learn about all of these different things in a classroom and in an executive education program. But you know what? Nobody ever learned how to ride a bike at a seminar. Nobody ever learned how to ride a bike at an executive education program. They learned how to ride the bike. They learned how to get this stuff right when they applied it directly to their business. They had conditioning. So it's like if you're lifting weights or you're running and you've got somebody who's letting you know, hey, here's how you do it properly. Here's how you run properly. Get the right shoes. Here's how to lift weights properly. You get that conditioning, you do the reps right, and you get the accountability. That's when you've got success. So that is the secret sauce. Okay, so I'm going to show a set of pictures, and I want you to write down in the chat room what picture best describes your biggest aha so far. So which of these pictures best describes your biggest aha? So tell us the picture and then, briefly describe, kind of what it means to you, what the aha means. So go ahead and post that in the chat room. I'll pause for 30 seconds, drink some green tea while you do that. You can probably hear the ladder in the background, house construction. Which picture is your biggest aha? Okay, Nicole, what are we seeing in the chat? You got it. There you go.
We have Annette and John both said the I, providing clarity. Corrine, the bicycle, and I need to try to get good. Clint, the octopus or the checklist.
All right, octopus, feel like you're being pulled in a lot of different directions. Go ahead.
And Christine, the puzzle piece, I need to find the right pieces to make it work and quit avoiding the ones that I don't like.
Awesome. All right, good. Yeah, that's a great observation, Christine, and really focusing and choosing the things that you're going to nail. Okay, so I'm not sure why everybody showed up today. Some are launching or rebooting your business. In some cases, you're starting a new, some here are starting new leadership roles and know that the habits that got to one level are not going to be the same habits that allow you to succeed at this new level. Many of us are facing turbulence and uncertainty. We wrote that in the, on the polls. you want more command and less chaos, or you just simply want to stop pinballing, stop running around with the hair on fire. One of my clients in this current mastery program said, I feel like I'm staring at the top of the mountain and I'm wearing flip-flops and I have no idea how to get up, and I have no idea how my flip-flops are going to hold up as I get up this mountain. Well, here's exactly how you make it happen. Here's exactly how you get up the mountain. The first one is the awareness and intention. Awareness of what you want to fix among these 7 things that'll help you accelerate your growth and overcome the obstacles, and the intention to make it happen. Then you get the knowledge transfer and create the action plans to begin to put those new practices in place. You get the right people holding you accountable, the right coach that helps you do things right into a high standard. And through that process, you develop new habits that suddenly become sustainable over time. And that's exactly how you get up the mountain. We have created the Re-Emergence Mastery Program, an 8-week program to help people do just that. So the Re-Emergence Mastery Program, it is an invitation or an application only results-oriented program. So it's not a learning program, it's a results program. So you mentioned application, conditioning, and accountability. That's exactly what this is. It's a results program. It's not a learning program. You already know enough. We just have to apply that in ways that get results in your business. It's a program that's about transformation, not a program about information. One of the things that drives people crazy about executive education programs is they feel like they get carpet bombed with PDFs, and binders and binders and binders full of documents and video collections and audio collections. And oh my goodness, you can't possibly consume it all. It's inconsumable. It's like looking for a needle of insight in a haystack full of stuff. And you don't have time for that. So what you need is a program that's focused on transformation. So you get just enough information, just enough training, just enough accountability to get the results that you want. And this program, nothing's left out, nothing is assumed. It's a step-by-step process that's easy to follow and gives you the application to your business. You're solving your business challenges, not somebody else's business case. It's application, conditioning, and accountability. So in the mission, vision, goals, values, and focus sections, we're gonna work on getting a mindset right. We're gonna help you laser focus on your priorities, which will get you relief from the constant firefighting. You're gonna set your cadence so you get this kind of predictability that's gonna power your growth. You've got time to nail the things that you want to nail to work on your business rather than in your business. You regain time for growth. In the leadership and culture side, we're going to get more command and less chaos. We need more command of our time, talent, and energy, and those of our employees, less chaos. You're going to help you stop over communicating, stop over promising, under delivering, stop the battle. Many of us are in a position where you might want to reload and rebalance your team. So this is going to help you get the exact right people in the right seats on the right bus at the right time. So you've got diversity and balance that's going to power your growth. You're going to be able to stop wasting your time and energy refereeing disputes and dealing with dramas. Because when you get a culture of commitment, when people they are meeting your performance values and expectations because they understand them and they're committed to them. When you get that kind of culture of commitment, then people are going to do the right thing when nobody's watching. You probably hear the ladder banging in the background. So you're going to people are going to do the right thing even when nobody's watching. Imagine how it would feel when you have that kind of organization versus an organization where you've just got to focus on basic compliance. There's a world of difference between the two. And finally, on the action plan, decision-making, and resilience, steps, you're going to come away with a 90-day action plan that you can execute because you write. It's not full of consultant speak and gobbledygook and other nonsense. It's a simple, repeatable 90-day action plan that as you encounter all of these new abnormals, you can make the right adjustments and continue to grow. You're going to be able to stop your team going 100 miles an hour in the wrong direction and avoid the peaks and valleys that so many organizations face. You're going to be able to, we're going to talk action steps to maintain high levels of performance despite all of the uncertainty. And of course, eliminate the expensive mistakes because I won't let you make them. So how do I get up the mountain? Well, for some people, they'll take the information that we have in this masterclass and in in our emails and an ebook I'll send to you, and just want to do it yourself. And do it yourself is great. A lot of people do it that way. Some are successful. Some find themselves in a part of the Matterhorn mountainside that they maybe didn't anticipate. The other way is to, and the more reliable way is to get a guide that you trust. Somebody's going to make sure that you got the right equipment, you got the right game plan, you got the right route, and you can make adjustments along the way, because even climbing the Matterhorn has difficulties and uncertainties. One guide is, of course, the Re-Emergence Mastery Program. This is a right fit for some people. It's not the right fit for everybody, and not everybody's the right fit for this program. This is one guide that we'll offer, but find the guide that's right for you. If you think that this program might be a good guide, then it's application only. This program begins on July 2nd, so a week and a day, a week from tomorrow, it begins. The application is there on the bottom at that link. Nicole's going to post that link in the chat room, so you've got easy access to it. And when you click on that link, here's exactly what you're going to see. First of all, is you're going to select a time that works for you. So as you can see, I've cleared away a lot of time for people to apply to discuss this program. So Thursday is looking pretty good. Friday and Tuesday, we've already had a lot of takers, so not many options Friday and Tuesday. Then you got Wednesday, which I've cleared the decks for Wednesday, and then the program begins on Thursday. So pick the time that works for you. And then that'll take you to 4 simple questions. What are your top 3 goals you want to achieve? What are the top 3 obstacles you want to overcome? If you've been in a master program before, what hasn't worked for you? And do you agree to maintain strict confidentiality? So answer those questions. We'll have a 30-minute call. We'll discuss your goals. We'll discuss the obstacles. We'll discuss specific action steps you can take to get there from here. And at the end of it, we'll decide whether this program is a right fit for you and whether you're a right fit for the program. If it's a green light from both of us, we move forward. If it's not, then you've come away from the call and from this masterclass with action items that you didn't have before. Either way, it's a win. Okay, so that's the masterclass. Above is the apply link, and it's also in the chat room. And I will stay on the chat for your questions. Now it's Q&A time. And in fact, I'm going to stop sharing, and I'm going to go right to the chat. Yes, Christine, it's almost July. John O'Grady, boom, sign me up. You're going to have to apply first, John. What questions do you have? Clint says, most of what you shared seems mostly applicable to teams. It's just me. Can your programs help a solo founder? Yes, absolutely. And so, in fact, in the master program, we've got 2 solo founders right now. So we can have a conversation, Clint, and see if that works. If this program is a good fit for you. I mean, I don't let anybody in this program unless I am convinced that they are going to be successful. And in all of my programs, people find that they get their return on investment already. They've already made that return, whether it's in more revenues or in more peace of mind, better command of their time, less chaos. They find that they've already made that return on investment before the program ends. And if you don't get those results, then you one of us isn't doing their jobs, and it's normally not me. So I always do my job, and people get a great ROI. So Clint, we can have a call, and I'll send you, when you schedule that, I'll send you the kind of the quick 2-pager on the program, and we can discuss whether this is a good fit for you or you're a good fit for it. Corinne, the program is 8 weeks long. So it's you're going to get 8 Zoom sessions, where we'll do some training on the specific focus area for that week, and then Q&A, and then you've got assignments where we will you will apply it directly to your business. What do you find? Vikram says, what do you find most people need to work on first? Any trends? Yeah, it's normally when you go back to those 7 items. In fact, let me share the screen real quick again. There we go. When we go to these 7 items, yeah, I'll just click, just keep it right there. Oftentimes the mission, vision, goals, and values are very vague. People have, so they don't have a good basis for making decisions. Focus is a big challenge, where people feel like they're always engaged in the firefighting, and they don't feel that they've got time to focus on their particular business and focus on on growth. They just feel like they're just pinballing everywhere. A lot of you get the exhaustion from people who are trying to meet some sort of artificial leadership ideal and not being themselves. Even solo entrepreneurs, to get back to Clint's question, even solo entrepreneurs need a culture. Part of that culture is defining your personal goals and your standards and expectations. Part of that is holding you accountable. And then part of that is also essentially your contract with your customers and the people you outsource with, and the partners you have. So that relationship is essential. And so that kind of contract with them is part of your culture. A lot of organizations don't have a good action plan, especially now. People are kind of treading water. So those are some of the big things that we tend to see missing, and then that absence of or problems in those areas are going to drive decision making challenges. Whether it's groupthink, whether it's confirmation bias. I had confirmation bias in that. In that digital marketing program, where I and the person who had the digital marketing program we just convinced ourselves that people are going to sign up for trips to Normandy through Facebook, and it was just looking back on it, it's crazy. But it was my kind of big lesson about avoiding some of those common errors. Resilience is a big challenge right now, as you can imagine. People have just gone through things that, with this pandemic and with the economic shutdown, that we just haven't ever experienced. I mean, since the Great Depression, when you think about it. And so people are working from home. People are being laid off. People have got loved ones and relatives that might have been sick at some point, and so people are going through things that we don't fully appreciate. and people are going through challenges that, when you operate on a high level of chronic stress, one of the people on this call is a stress expert. When you operate on high levels of chronic stress for a long period of time, I mean, it wipes you out. It's like being in combat, 15 months commanding combat. I mean, I was wiped out after that. And there are people who are feeling the same way. So there's kind of a potentially people talk about a coronavirus second wave, where there's a second wave of challenges. The first wave, how do we get people to thrive in a remote or distributed work environment? But there's all these pressures and stressors that people are facing now that we as people who are solo entrepreneurs or leaders need to be able to work through and handle appropriately. Laura, how do you make adjustments to your cadence time blocking when you don't always have total autonomy of your time? What do you recommend? There are a couple of things I suggest. First of all, on those times when you do have total autonomy, is you focus that time on your priorities. Second is talk to your boss. Michelle Flournoy tells this great story. We did a leadership roundtable that is on our website, and she said when she became the Undersecretary of Defense for Policy, a hugely demanding job, number 3 person in the Pentagon, and she also had 3 small children, or 3 kind of teenagers and grade schoolers at that time. And she asked the Secretary of Defense, she said, hey look, I need, this time, I mean, I'm yours like all the time, but this time I need for my family. This time I need to do X, Y, and Z. And, if there's an emergency, of course, I get it. But if all things being the same, I'd like to have this time where I can focus on my family. I'd like to have this time when I can focus on X, Y, and Z. And so a way to deal with that when you don't have total autonomy, Laura, is to talk with your boss and ask for that time, and ask that time be respected. Yeah, Christine says, I'm in a program, Clint, and I'm solo as well. Right on. Vikram, I'm a weird hybrid, solo biz, but a lot of teams I rely on are a part of. Right on. Vikram, each session is, we schedule 90 minutes, so about 30 to 45 minutes of content, and then Q&A. So that's what each kind of weekly session looks like, and then you unlimited email access to me, of course, and we can noodle on your assignments and answer whatever questions, help you overcome obstacles, develop action steps that get you the results that you want. Laura McKenna, I have a not to-do list, but I'm not in a position to outsource at this time, and sometimes I have difficulty refusing to do things that are distracting. What do you recommend for the interim until I can outsource? And what advice do you have for somebody who can be a bit of a people pleaser and therefore sometimes has difficulty refusing non-priority tasks? Ooh, that is a dynamite question, Laura. And part of it, so one of the key things that from your question is that self-awareness, that this is a tendency. And shoot, when I lived in Washington, D.C., I now live in Milwaukee. When I lived in Washington, D.C., I would get pulled in all sorts of Afghanistan stuff just because of my background. I got pulled in all sorts of Afghanistan stuff, and it's stuff I enjoyed doing, and stuff I knew made a contribution, stuff I knew was important. But the more I got pulled into Afghanistan stuff, the less I was doing business development, and it like dried out my pipeline. So it was one of those things where I kept doing it and didn't recognize the impact of it until it was like, oops, my pipeline is dry, and this is really not a good thing. Moving to Milwaukee, I don't get pulled into the Afghanistan events anymore. And I've also learned to say no. Even though I want to do them, even though I like to do them, unless I can make this sort of unique game-changing impact anymore, I just won't do it. and I'll focus instead on the things that are most important to me. So learning to, being willing to say no, even on things that you enjoy doing, and even with people that you want to please, is really important. And people will respect that. People will respect that time. So say no, and it's okay. Give yourself permission to say no in a friendly way, and it'll be okay. I've given my permission to say no on Afghanistan stuff, and oh my goodness, it feels good. Corinne, are all the Zoom meetings live or they're pre-recorded? They're all live for this program. They're all live, so you will get content, and then the live Q&A. So it's personal interaction with me throughout the program. Thanks for a great question, Corinne. Christine says, I was hoping to hire an intern this summer, but COVID killed my brilliant idea to get moving. So I signed up for Chris's program. Right on, Christine. We are going to rock it. Yeah, a lot of those, all of those things, it does wipe you out, Laura. And one of the most liberating things that I've done is taking my own medicine. I am in a mastery program about, with a mentor, and also I'm in his year-long program. And one of the things that he says is, look, all of this sort of what he calls marketing monkey work. I mean, all of these things that everybody's telling you to do videos, do blogs, get a YouTube channel. You got to be on Twitter. You got to be on Facebook. You got to be on LinkedIn, and yada, 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 yada. It is exhausting, and it doesn't work. Find 2 or 3 things that you want to do marketing wise, and it might be and make them repurpose, make them mutually reinforcing. So I want to do I want to do blogs, I'm going to do LinkedIn, and boom, that's it. And I'll do a couple of videos, and those videos and those blog posts are not only going to go on my website, but they're also going to go on LinkedIn. So everything is mutually reinforcing, rather than feeling like you've got to do it all. Just focus on a couple of things where your ideal clients are. And for me, my ideal clients are more on LinkedIn. They tend not to be on Facebook or Twitter, at least for that. Clint is asking about cost. So we talk about that in the call. I don't like to have a cost discussion until we have a value discussion. And I won't let anybody sign up for the program if I don't believe with every conviction of my being that that person is going to make that investment back and have a positive ROI. Thanks for the question, Clint. Yes, Vikram, I feel Laura, people pleasing is like a drug. I know, right? We're all people pleasers. I mean, 95% of people are people pleasers. And we do have, and people, the people who count will respect, and we have to say no. And it's okay. The people who count are the people who are going to respect that. Yeah, Laura, great comment there in the chat. Christine, me too. No has become a word for my vocabulary. Rock on, Christine. No is a question in my vocabulary. You know it. It's so liberating and so important. How to choose through the noise of what platforms to use and to market well. Yeah, we're going to talk about that. And for people, it's different. So on my team, we've got some people who, their ideal clients are on Twitter, and that's what they use, and that's where they look for advice about their particular skill and industry. For me, it's mainly on LinkedIn. That's where people tend to go for kind of business insight and stuff. Others, especially like if you're Laura, or others who are dealing with things like stress or relationships and stuff like that. A lot of times that ideal client's on Facebook, and you're just wasting your time in other places. So find out. The great way to do this is pulse the kind of people you want to serve. Do a Survey Monkey. Get on Survey Monkey or Typeform. Do a quick poll, 4 to 5 questions. Send it to the ideal clients and have one of the questions. Hey, where do you seek advice about X? Where are you willing to, and Twitter, Facebook, LinkedIn, Google search, and see what they say. The answer might surprise you. But the key is to go where they are. Yeah, thanks, Clint. We'll have that discussion. Awesome. Thank you, Corinne. You got awesome. You got a 2 p.m. so you've got to go. I've got about 2 more minutes for questions, and then we are finished. So final questions. Otherwise, for everybody who has been in this masterclass, thank you very much. I'm going to send you the link to the ebook that gives you awesome steps on being the best version of yourself and helping others do the same. So thank you very much for your attendance, and I look forward to chatting with you soon.